Welcome to NFL Nexus. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into a situation that has sent massive, undeniable shockwaves throughout the entire AFC South. Before we break down this absolute cinematic shift in the Houston Texans' defensive landscape, I need you to do something crucial for us. Subscribe to the channel, hit that like button on this explainer, and drop a comment below with your honest thoughts on how this team survives what we're about to discuss. And hey, if you want to truly support this kind of deep dive documentary-style content, consider becoming a channel member today. Okay, let's get into it, because the 2026 Houston Texans defense was supposed to be an impenetrable fortress. We're talking about a unit meticulously designed and heavily funded to just completely suffocate elite quarterbacks, to control the line of scrimmage and totally dominate the unforgiving trenches from week 1 all the way to the Super Bowl. But as you know, in the National Football League, the best laid plans of a front office can be completely, violently dismantled before the very first whistle of training camp even blows.
Literally, everything changed in a matter of seconds. I want you to picture the scene. It's the Houston Texans' state-of-the-art training facility. It's the off-season. This is a time that's traditionally reserved for building, for unguarded optimism. You know, the quiet, meticulous sculpting of a championship-caliber roster. It was supposed to be a totally routine weightlifting session. Just the heavy, rhythmic clang of iron plates echoing through that cavernous room. The smell of chalk, the smell of turf. And then, a sudden, devastating physical snap. In one singular violent instant, an entire off-season blueprint, a plan carefully crafted by head coach D'Amico Ryans and his entire staff over hundreds of sleepless hours, was completely derailed. The air in the room instantly changed. The whole trajectory of a highly anticipated defense shifted, right then and there on the rubber floor of the weight room.
Section 1. A sudden and devastating blow.
Now, the stakes for this 2026 offseason were already incredibly high. And suddenly, this immense, suffocating pressure is mounting on the front seven. We're talking about the loss of veteran anchor and linebacker E.J. Speed, the official medical diagnosis, a partially torn quadriceps and tendon. And let's be clear, this isn't a simple ankle sprain. It's not a routine muscle tweak where you just need a little ice and elevation for a few days. Think about the intricate, heavy-duty mechanics of the human leg for a second. The quadriceps tendon is an incredibly robust, thick band of fibrous tissue. It literally anchors the massive, explosive muscles of the thigh directly to the kneecap. It's the biological mechanism that allows a 230-pound human being to plant their foot in the dirt and explode into a tackle. So to tear this tissue, even partially, a player's muscle has to contract with an immense, unnatural force, while the knee is simultaneously bearing an incredible load. It's a violent, terrifying physics equation gone completely wrong within the body. And honestly, it's a stark, gruesome reminder of the sheer, brutal toll the sport takes on the men who play it, even when they're just preparing their bodies in a highly controlled weight room environment. The agonizing path that lies ahead for E.J. Speed is a methodical, grueling timeline of isolation and pain. First up, he has to undergo complex reconstructive surgery. This is going to be carefully performed by the renowned, highly specialized team doctor, Dr. Dan Cooper. But from the exact moment he wakes up from anesthesia, Speed is staring down a brutal, mandatory minimum 3-month rehabilitation process. And that's just to regain absolute baseline functionality of his leg. Because this catastrophic event happened in the offseason, placing him on the active/physically unable to perform list to open training camp is an absolute unavoidable certainty. And when you look down the calendar toward the fall, he's facing an inevitable looming transition to the reserve/PUP list to open the regular season. That specific roster designation carries a crushing, unyielding reality with it, a mandatory minimum 4-game absence. The Houston Texans will be forced to take the field in the blistering heat of September to face the most lethal offenses in the world entirely without him.
Section 2. The $10 million void.
You see, this isn't just a heartbreaking medical setback for a highly respected veteran. It is a massive financial and tactical crater left behind, right in the dead center of D'Amico Ryans' carefully orchestrated defensive scheme. $10 million. That is the deeply elevated stake of the brand new 2-year deal E.J. Speed proudly signed just this past March. In the salary cap era of the NFL, every single dollar is a calculated chess piece, right? The Texans front office made him a priority. They looked at their defense, they looked at the brutal AFC landscape, and they decided that his veteran presence, his diagnostic ability, and his raw tackling power were worth a highly significant premium investment. That included $7.5 million in cold, hard, guaranteed money at the exact time of signing. Remember, they brought him over originally in 2025 on a prove-it 1-year deal, absolutely loved the relentless motor they saw, and paid him handsomely to be the permanent anchor of the second level. But now,
That massive $10 million investment is indefinitely sidelined. It's trapped in the lonely confines of the rehab room, totally unable to yield a single ounce of return on the field when the grueling season finally kicks off. Let's look closely at the cold, hard, irreplaceable production this defense is suddenly losing from his 2025 campaign in Houston. 9 crucial starts, 62 total tackles, but the most alarming, absolutely devastating statistic of all, 44%. EJ Speed was out there on the field diagnosing plays and hitting running backs for nearly half of all defensive snaps for the Houston Texans last year. He was the vital, hard-hitting number 3 linebacker operating right behind Henry To'oTo'o and Azeez Al-Shaair. You do not just snap your fingers and magically replace a human being who is entrusted to be on the field for 44% of your defensive plays in the complex modern NFL. He was the key communicator. He was the primary gap filler. That's a massive structural chunk of your tactical playbook that just evaporated into thin air in the span of a single weightlifting rep.
Which leads us to the most terrifying, anxiety-inducing question currently circulating through the quiet halls of the Texans facility. How exactly do you replace an anchor? Just let the heavy, undeniable weight of that question hang in the air for a second. Imagine being DeMeco Ryans right now, sitting totally alone in a dark film room, the glow of the projector illuminating his face as he frantically looks down a suddenly incredibly thin, unproven depth chart. He knows the brutal reality of the AFC South. He knows the opposing offensive coordinators are already drawing up plays to attack the exact spot where EJ Speed used to stand. The rest of the league, they are not going to pause and wait for his team to heal.
Section 3. Next man up. In the National Football League, sympathy is completely non-existent. The mantra is brutal, but absolutely necessary for survival. Next man up. We're about to witness the terrifyingly abrupt acceleration of 3 distinct young careers. These are players who rightfully thought they had the luxury of time to develop, time to ease into a comfortable rotation. But now, they're being violently thrust into the unforgiving fire. Let's microanalyze the specific traits and the intense personal stakes of the successors stepping into this crisis. First up, Henry To'oTo'o. He was already a designated starter, but now he's playing on an expiring rookie deal. The personal stakes for a massive, life-changing payday just skyrocketed for him. He has to mentally and physically carry this unit on his back. Next, we've got Wade Woodaz, a 4th-round pick from this year's draft. His college tape at Clemson showed an athlete with crucial sideline-to-sideline coverage range, and suddenly his multi-year development timeline is completely thrown out the window. He has to read NFL offenses and produce immediately. And finally, Marte Mapu. He was quietly acquired via pick swap trade with the New England Patriots. But Mapu isn't just fighting for rotational snaps here. He's making a desperate, career-defining push just to cement his spot on the final 53-man roster. With Speed out, Mapu's unique positional versatility might literally be the only life raft keeping this depth chart afloat.
An immense, potentially back-breaking burden is about to fall directly onto the shoulders of Henry To'oTo'o. Looking back at his 2025 workload, he played an exhausting 79% of the defensive snaps. But what's deeply fascinating about that number is that it was actually a highly intentional dip from his grueling 2024 season, where he played 85%. The Texans coaching staff were actively trying to manage his reps. They were trying to keep his legs fresh for the grueling stretch of a 17-game season by heavily utilizing EJ Speed in specific packages to give him a breather. But with Speed's tendon violently snapped, that crucial 21% sliver of rest, it's about to vanish entirely. That workload is going to completely consume him. The defense will demand every single ounce of energy, focus, and physicality he has in his body, and then they're going to ask for more.
Section 4. The rookie force emerges.
Now, here is where the narrative trajectory of this defense dramatically pivots. And honestly, this is exactly what makes NFL roster building so cinematic and unpredictable. If your linebackers are wounded, if the second level of your defense is actively bleeding talent and experience, then the first level, the massive men on the defensive line, must instantly transform into an impenetrable, unmovable fortress. They absolutely cannot allow 300-pound offensive linemen to cleanly reach the second level and block those young, inexperienced linebackers. The entire defensive philosophy has to immediately shift to pure protection up front. Enter a number that is going to strike genuine fear into the hearts of opposing offenses. 326. That is 326 pounds of raw, dense, line-of-scrimmage resetting power. We are talking about the incredibly imposing 6'2" physical frame of second-round draft pick, defensive tackle Keaton McDonald. With the linebacking core in a state of absolute crisis, McDonald is stepping directly from the college ranks into the blinding NFL spotlight. He's no longer just a developmental rookie project. He is a necessary, destructive force of nature required for this evolving defense to survive.
Listen very closely to how Jared Koch over at Sports Illustrated describes him. He said, he has the relentless mentality and physicality the Texans covet. Think about the sheer, unadulterated violence underlying that statement. That isn't just about being a large human being. It's about a deep, ingrained mentality. It's about taking the shocking, explosive violence he routinely put on tape during his Saturdays at Ohio State and bringing it straight into the heart of Houston's defensive front on Sundays. The Texans don't just want him to play a role. They desperately need him to completely dominate the pure physicality of the trenches. They need him to act as a human shield, absorbing double teams and creating pure chaos, just to protect those vulnerable linebackers standing right behind him.
Section 5. Resetting the scrimmage line. Let's dive deep into the unforgiving, claustrophobic trenches to really understand the brutal anatomy of what resetting the scrimmage line actually looks like. It is a highly violent, close-quarters combat zone down there, basically in a phone booth, where leverage is literally everything. Draft analyst Dane Brugler outlined McDonald's terrifying technique perfectly. Step 1, it all begins with an explosive initial burst off the snap. He doesn't just lean forward, he fires off the ball with malicious intent to immediately dictate the physical terms of the engagement. Step 2, shucking blocks from a perfectly leveraged position. He naturally gets his pads far lower than the opposing offensive lineman, utilizing his raw 326-pound core power to violently shed their blocking hands. And then, step 3, the absolute most crucial part of this whole sequence, winning the deadly game of peekaboo in the tight A-gap run lanes. In the fraction of a second between the center and the guard, McDonald establishes half-man leverage. He locks out his heavy hands to paralyze the blocker's forward momentum, peeks into the backfield to see exactly where the running back is committing his hips, and then violently, aggressively discards that 300-pound lineman to swallow the ball carrier whole. It is pure, terrifying dominance in the tightest, most highly contested space on a football field.
And hey, if you don't want to blindly believe the media analysts, listen to head coach DeMeco Ryans himself, a man who literally built his entire career on elite, punishing defensive play. He said when he's across the line from an offensive lineman, no matter who it was, he was knocking those guys back in the backfield. Close your eyes for a second. Focus on the visceral, auditory reality of what that actually sounds like on a practice field. The sharp, violent crack of carbon fiber shoulder pads colliding at full speed. The heavy grunt of trench warfare. The jarring, unnatural sight of a 300-pound professional offensive lineman being violently, forcefully knocked backward against his own will. That is the exact, rare type of earth-moving power Ryans is desperately relying on right now to patch the massive, bleeding hole left behind by E.J. Speed.
Now, looking at this roster objectively, McDonald is still just a rookie. And he does have one glaring remaining flaw in his game right now. He's still actively trying to develop a true pass rush identity. He is by no means a polished, finished product when it comes to chasing elite, elusive quarterbacks on obvious passing downs like 3rd and long. He totally lacks the diverse repertoire of hand swipes and spin moves of a seasoned veteran. But frankly, the Houston Texans can easily live with that for right now. His overwhelming early down dominance, his sheer uncoachable ability to completely stop the run game in its tracks and create absolute offensive chaos on 1st and 2nd down is exactly the critical band-aid this bleeding defense requires to survive the loss of their veteran run stopper.
Section 6. An evolving defense.
What we're witnessing right now, playing out before our very eyes, is the real-time forced evolution of an entire NSL defense. The agonizing, totally unpredictable loss of a veteran anchor in a quiet weight room is directly forcing the brutal, highly accelerated rise of raw rookie power on the stadium turf. The contrast here is incredibly stark and honestly, deeply fascinating. On one side, you have the veteran void. That's E.J. Speed's precise, deeply experienced run-stopping ability and those 44% of critically missing defensive snaps. It's a massive, glaring tactical crater left by a violently snapped tendon. And on the exact opposite side, you have the rookie power. Caden McDonald's earth-moving, aggressively dominant A-gap control. DeMeco Ryans is essentially attempting to fill a massive tactical hole on the 2nd level of his defense by creating an absolute, unmovable physical mountain on the 1st level. It's brilliant, yet incredibly high-stakes gamble born purely out of absolute necessity.
And that brings us to this final, striking reality. The Houston Texans defense is deeply wounded, but it is rapidly evolving. The unresolved tension of this incredibly high-stakes 2026 season hangs heavily in the air. Will this raw, powerful rookie force actually be enough to cover up the deep structural scars left behind on the weight room floor? Can a defensive mastermind like DeMeco Ryans truly scheme his way out of such a catastrophic, momentum-halting physical blow to his roster? We'll be watching every single grueling snap to find out. Before we fade to black, an urgent reminder for you. If you want to truly understand the deep cinematic narratives shaping this league, make sure you subscribe to NFL Nexus, like this explainer, leave your predictions in the comments, and become a channel member today. I'll leave you with this final lingering thought. In a brutal, unforgiving league ultimately decided by mere inches and microseconds, what happens when a championship-contending team is forced to completely rely on a 326-pound rookie to hold the line against the most lethal offenses in the world? Well, we are about to find out.